Welcome to Train Signal. You're watching a lesson on professional practices. Now, I have to tell you, going into this lesson, um, I know we've learned a lot of technical stuff in this course. Right? We learned about motherboards and memory and processors and all kinds of fun stuff like that. And it's a lesson like this that if you're listening to me right now, well, first of all, let me commend you on even starting this lesson. Because some people will just skip it. They just don't care. They don't care about customer service. They don't care about acting professional. Or it may not be that they don't care about doing it. They just feel they don't need to be taught how to do it. And I have to tell you that this lesson is one of the most important lessons to me for that exact reason. The number of IT professionals who think that they don't need to be taught how to act professionally is a big problem. Now, it's not as much of a problem today as it was years ago, right? In the old days, IT professionals were very arrogant, egotistical, self-involved people. That was the personality. Matter of fact, there's even been various jokes and skits that have been done. And so we had to push real hard to teach computer professionals how to take on the professionalism and the customer service skills that all the other professions take on. Okay, so we're going to just talk about that a little bit here. I will try not to go on too long with this. We'll keep this short and to the point. But I want you to understand that it is important. Let's start off by talking about the image. Perception is reality. As an IT professional, this is how we see ourselves. But very often, this is how I have on the screen there normal people. I want to be careful here. I think IT professionals are also normal people. I'm going to say this is how non-IT professionals see us. All right? And we don't want that. We want other people to see us the same way we see ourselves. Now, I have something interesting here called the skills continuum. All right, here we go. On one end, we have high social skills, and on the other end, we have high technical skills. And for the longest time, it was kind of like you were one or the other. That's what it seemed like, right? You either had somebody with high social skills, right? And I'm going to be stereotyping here a little bit, and even with some of these pictures that I'm using here. But basically, you have somebody who's great with people, but they don't know anything about technology, right? They can talk to people all day long. Very personable. They don't know anything about computers. But then on the other end of the spectrum, you got the people with the high tech skills. Is that the same person there? Just different hairstyle, glasses, whatever. Anyway, you have somebody with high technical skills, very intelligent, very skilled, but doesn't know how to interact with people. Well, what you want to strive for is to be as close to the middle as possible. Okay? You want to be somebody who has the technical skills, right? You understand how all this stuff works. You've learned everything I've taught you here in this course. You understand how technology works. But I want you to also be good with people. I want you to know how to talk to people. And remember that the key is balance. You don't want to be too geeked out, and you also don't want to be too, so social that you can't fix the computer problems. All right, so what are some of the keys to maintaining a professional image? Well, you should wear neat, appropriate clothing. This, again, was a big problem. A lot of IT professionals, they'd walk around with torn jeans and a t-shirt. You don't see it as much anymore because a lot of companies have realized, no, my IT professionals are going to dress like everyone else. You want to have good, courteous behavior. Understand that the person you are helping, they also were probably right in the middle of something when things broke. And although they may not know as much as you do about the computer and how to fix it, well, they may know more about something that they do that you don't know as much about. So try to be courteous and respectful. Please be punctual. If you're supposed to be somewhere at a certain time, be there on time. Maybe even be a little early. And if you can't be, I mean, sometimes things happen, communicate that to them. Make sure to reach out to your customer and let them know, hey, I am running late. I'm very sorry. This is what happened. And again, you don't want to sound like you're making a bunch of excuses, but try to avoid those excuses as much as possible. But if something truly has happened, make sure you at least call. Be very responsive. Okay, be responsive to their needs. If they're asking you to do something, understand what it is they're asking you to do and respond to it. And another big one is be very consistent with follow-up. There's two forms of follow-up. I mean, one follow-up is just to follow up and say, hey, just want to see things still working good for you. Another type of follow-up is the more direct follow-up where you've done something and you explicitly say, I'll need to check back with you, or we will need to come back and do something at a later time. If you have a scheduled direct follow-up, be very consistent with it. And I guess it goes along with punctuality. If you say you're going to be there, then be there. Keep your commitments, right? I just said, if you say you're going to be there, be there. Not just be there on time. Don't just follow up. If you say you are, if you say you're going to do something, do it. Keep your commitments. Now, the next thing I want to talk to you about here is communication. When you have poor communication, well, this is how confusion happens, right? It could be a miscommunication. Could be unmet expectations. Customer thinks you're supposed to do one thing, you think you're supposed to do another. Might have a cultural difference. This is one thing I actually want to stop for a moment and kind of point out. Please keep in mind that many different, I even want to be careful as I'm talking to you right now, but I was going to say different types of people come from different areas of the world where there are different cultural differences, there are different religious differences. And when I say types of people, that's right there. That's a problem. People are people, right? Everyone should be treated with respect. When I say types, it could be a man versus a woman. It could be one religion versus another. It could be one nationality versus another. And there are differences in the way these different I hate that I keep saying it, but types of people, the way they were brought up, the way they think, and the expectations that they have. So please try to be respectful and understanding that other people may not think exactly the way you think. They may not have beliefs that you have. They may not have been brought up the same way you were. Okay, you may feel that a certain type of language is acceptable, and they may find it to be extremely offensive. So you want to make sure you know your customer and know what you're dealing with so that you can be respectful of the cultural differences. Listening. This is a big one when it comes to communication. It's not just about you communicating to them. It's not a matter of you knowing how to explain something to somebody. You need to learn to listen to what they're telling you. One thing you want to do is practice active listening. Okay, and active listening involves maybe you not just sitting there and listening and nodding your head, but maybe you repeat back what was said. You want to be careful with this here, because how many times have you called into a customer service center and you explain a problem, and then that customer service person says, so let me see, if I heard you correctly, what you're saying is, you know what, if somebody has stated something to you that is simple and obvious, if they said to you, hey, I'm calling you because the sky is blue, don't repeat back to them, so if I'm understanding you correctly, what you're saying here is the problem is you're saying the sky is blue. Because now they're just sitting there, they're losing respect for you because you're not actually listening. You are following some kind of robotic script, basically. Okay, the idea is you want to paraphrase back to somebody. They give you some kind of long explanation about, every time I sign in at the beginning of the day, it seems like it's taking longer and longer. And the last time I signed in, it took 20 minutes before I could start using my computer. Paraphrase back and say, okay, so what you're telling me is that login times are becoming a problem for you, and we need to work on that. Keep it paraphrased and in your own words, and not like you're a robot. But you do want to repeat back so that A, they know you're listening, and B, You know that you've heard them correctly by their acknowledgement. Make sure you don't interrupt. This is a big problem for me. People who know me, they know I interrupt all the time. I'm such a talker that people will talk, they'll be telling me something, and if I think I understand what they're telling me and they haven't finished telling me, I interrupt them. And that's a problem. And I acknowledge that, and I do my best to avoid that, especially in professional environments. Ask questions. Ask questions related to the difficulties that they're having, so that, again, you understand that this is a two-way conversation so that you can truly understand what their problem is. Next here I have striving for clarity. And you notice what I have a special keyboard here that has all kinds of acronyms on it that have become almost part of the human language at this point because of texting. You don't want to use acronyms. There are a ton of acronyms, even beyond these, that have to do with texting, but acronyms that have to do with technology. You want to avoid the acronyms. Take the time, whether it's you're writing to somebody or you're speaking to somebody, to say all the words. You'll notice in this course, as often as possible, when there is a common acronym for something, I would actually say something along the lines of, don't use acronyms, otherwise known as DUA. That's something you heard me say a lot in this course, and hopefully I did it every single time, because you want to make sure that people are clear on what it is that you're talking about. Use proper language. Okay? Try to avoid slang. This creates a couple of problems. Number one, depending on the person you're communicating with, remember how I kind of pulled out that cultural differences? Number one, if there's a language barrier, one person speaks one language and you speak another, using the slang version of your language could be enough that they won't understand you. Maybe they understand your language. So for instance, I speak English, and maybe somebody I'm talking to understands English, but only if I use it correctly. By using slang versions of English, it might change the meaning of what I'm saying in their interpretation. The second reason you want to avoid slang is, again, you don't want to end up coming off as using offensive language, whereas you might think it's okay, but others may be offended. Avoid technical terms. Now, you got to be careful with this one. When it comes to technical terms, you have to use a certain degree of technical terms when you're troubleshooting technology. Okay, that's just reality. If you're troubleshooting technology, well, that you're going to have to use some technical terms. But you want to avoid using the technical jargon as much as possible. Try to speak in layman's I'm going to say layman's English because I speak English, but layman's whatever language you're using, because the person you're talking to is not as technical as you are. And always try to be clear. Use examples if you have to, use analogies if you have to, use diagrams if you have to, actually point to something if you have to, but try to make sure that you're clear on whatever it is that you're trying to communicate. And then we move into customer service, right? I mentioned this was a big one. And a lot of what we're talking about has to do with customer service as a whole anyway. You want to make excellent service your goal. You want to have high quality customer service. And I can tell you from personal experience that I have actually, I've retained or even gained new customers and have made more money simply because I gave good customer service. I've had people who have called me back or referred me to somebody else on that one thing alone. They know that there's someone else that could also do the job that I could do, could fix their problem. Maybe they'll even do it for less money than I will. Maybe they'll do it faster than I will. But they called me because of the way they were treated by me. Okay, so this is a very important one that I know you may not think it is, but it is. And I don't think that you don't think it's important. I think that some people don't think it's important to listen to this, that they think, oh, I understand good customer service. I can tell you, being a former customer service trainer, being former customer service representative, if you go way, way back, I can tell you that you can't hear it enough. I can't hear it enough. I go to customer service training periodically. Sometimes formal, sometimes informal, but I need to hear it. We all need to hear it. So what do you want to do? Show courtesy and respect. I mean, these are going to be somewhat redundant from what we've been talking about all along. if anything, under promise and over deliver. I guess it goes back to the whole, if you say you're going to do something, then do it. Well, I would rather, tell somebody, hey, I'm sorry, but it's going to take a week to fix your computer, and then have it to them in 3 or 4 days, than to tell them, hey, I'll get to that tonight, and then tomorrow they're like, well, where's my computer? Communication is key. Keep the customer in the loop. Give updates, follow up after things have been fixed. Make sure things are still fixed. Make sure new problems haven't been created. And then here's a big one, and this is actually one of my specialties, by the way, when I did work in customer service, is dealing with difficult people. And it's funny because we all think that the other people are the difficult ones, right? You have to understand that you're just sitting there doing your job. Somebody who has called you to come fix their computer, they already are set to be a difficult person, right? To have that demeanor, because they're already flustered because they needed their computer to do what they're trying to do and they can't. So they're already flustered. So you're going to deal with a lot of difficult people. In this illustration, I'm saying that you're like the guy swimming there, and then you got the sharks. Those are your customers, right? Your customer is angry. You should stay calm. You get angry back at them, it's just going to escalate further and further and further. They're frustrated. You be patient. Understand their frustration. Understand why they're frustrated. It's very easy when somebody is frustrated and angry for you to become frustrated and angry. And it's a real key for you to learn how to stay calm and be patient with these people. They might be rude, and there's a certain level of rudeness that is acceptable and a certain level where you have to draw a line. Certain language maybe that's used. You say, listen, don't get angry and use bad language back to them. I'm just saying you need to calmly go ahead and explain to them, hey, I'm here to help. That's not appropriate language and I don't appreciate it. You stay polite at all times. You stay calm, patient, and polite. You'd be shocked. Now, don't do it to the extent that they get even more ticked off at you. Okay? You get someone who's just really mad. And you could probably relate with this, right? You get on the phone with some customer service person and you're really upset about something and they're like, oh, well, I'm really sorry about that. So, and you can tell that you're like, no, you're not. Okay? So you want to stay calm and be patient and polite, but be sincere. I think that's one word that I probably should have put up on the screen under customer service as a whole. Is sincerity is probably the key to everything. Is be sincere about it. And part of that sincerity involves being empathetic to their situation, understanding where they're coming from. You got to be careful with this term right here. Apologize. When I talk about sincerity being key, again, I know I don't think there's anything that frustrates me more than anything else than when I'm on the phone with a customer service representative and they apologize, but they don't mean it. They're apologizing it because the script tells them they should. If you only apologize if you mean it. If you can say it and mean it and really, honestly, sincerely, feel bad, and this comes from being able to empathize with the situation in the first place, and you can really apologize and be like, man, I'm really, really sorry this is happening. And include with that, don't just do a cold like, well, I'm very sorry, sir. That doesn't cut it. But to be able to say, I'm real sorry that you're going through this and that it takes so long for you to log on in the morning. And I'm going to do everything I can to try to deal with it. Okay, that right there, that's a sincere apology. And it will be very well received. And prioritize the actions that you should take. If you're listening clearly, and you hear what the customer is saying about why they're angry and frustrated and being rude to you and what it is that they're so mad about, you can prioritize the best way to solve what they see as being the problem as quickly as possible. And then maybe, on the back end, go in and do things to further help things along. And the bottom line is, don't get eaten. Don't get eaten alive. And really, I'll tell you what. You know what I should have shown here instead of a shark is I probably should have shown like a vampire. Maybe that would have been better. My understanding of most vampire stories, situations, movies, blah, 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 etc. is when a vampire bites you, essentially you don't die, you become a vampire. And so that would be kind of really what I want to say to you here is don't let them bite you. and turn you into suddenly being angry and frustrated and rude. It will never get you anywhere. This does bring us to the end of the lesson, but there's one thing I want to do real quickly with you, and that is I want to go through the literal CompTIA objectives because unlike many of the other lessons that I've had in this course, they're not quite as one-to-one a match across the board. And it's funny because if you read the objectives, it's almost like a customer service lesson. Okay, so the first thing they have in this on the objectives is using proper language. We did talk about that, making sure you use appropriate language, avoid jargon, acronyms, and slang. So we did talk about that. Maintain a positive attitude. Okay, where that comes into play above and beyond all else is when you are dealing with difficult people. But I think you should maintain a positive attitude at all times. Have you ever heard the saying, if you've ever worked like in a call center or something like that, it says smile, it shows through the phone? It does. That positive attitude makes a very big impact on the people you're dealing with. I mean, you don't want to take somebody who's actually not that angry and make them angry because you have a poor attitude. Listen and do not interrupt the customer. We talked about listening skills and not interrupting. Be culturally sensitive. We talked about that as well. Be on time. We talked about that. Avoid distractions. Yeah, this is another one. This is you being rude. If you are on the job, you are helping a customer, don't take personal calls, right? If you're on site, don't take a personal call. Don't talk to some other coworker while interacting with your customer. If the customer's talking to you, wait till they're done. Then you can talk to a coworker if you have to. And then they have listed personal interruptions, just as a whole. You stay focused on your customer. That's the important thing there. We did go through the dealing with a difficult customer situation that they have here, which is avoid arguing with them. Don't you become defensive. Don't minimize the customer's problem. That's a big one. Don't ever, ever, ever say to a customer that it's not a big deal. There's no better way to get them angry than to tell them that their problem is not a big deal. Matter of fact, you should never even think in your mind that it's not a big deal. Because what's not a big deal to you is a big deal to the customer. Try not to be judgmental and clarify their statements. Okay, so again, that kind of relates with when they're angry and they're telling you this is what's going on. Don't be a robot, but definitely repeat back to them. Make sure you truly understand and clarify what is it that is going on that they're upset about and what you can do to fix it. The next thing we have here is set and meet expectations. We talked about that, making sure that we make sure your expectations and the customer's expectations are the same. Make sure the timeline is the same. The sub-bullet points they have are offer different repair replacement options if applicable. So if there are various options, you may want to let the customer choose. Give them their options, let them choose. Provide proper documentation on what you provided. That's another really good one. If you want to make sure expectations are met, don't just tell them, okay, I fixed your computer. Actually give them documentation saying this is what was done and this is what you can expect. And follow-ups are very important. And the last thing we have here is dealing appropriately with customers on confidential materials. The bottom line is yeah. I mean, we didn't talk about that in this lesson at all. That's why I wanted to go through these bullet points. Understand that when it comes to computers, people are going to have confidential stuff. And you very often are going to get to see it. Now, in some cases, you may even want to have some form of written agreement which hold you and the customer to certain obligations on what can and can't be said or communicated and who it can or cannot be communicated to or with. Okay, and in some cases it can be literal confidential stuff like actual business proprietary stuff, and in some cases it's just a matter of you get on someone's computer, you get to see what websites they've been browsing through and this and that, and your customer may not want you talking about, hey, I was over at their place and man, you should have seen some of the stuff they were looking at on the internet. So always keep that stuff in mind. All right. That's all the bullet points. I wanted to make sure to literally go through those because they don't match up with what I like to present when it comes to good customer service and being professional. Everything in the CompTIA objectives is important, but this other stuff is equally important to this particular industry, and I wanted to make sure to cover it with you. So with that, I will shut up now. I thank you for watching the lesson, and I will see you in the next one.